Radio check, anybody copy? Hey everyone, I'm Alice Clenny Glenn, and this is the first full episode of Coffee and Quaq. Coffee and Quaq is a weekly podcast I created to celebrate and explore contemporary native life in urban Alaska. This episode 1, we're going to be learning you guys all about traditional Inuit tattoos. And I interviewed two fabulous ladies, Holly Nordlum, who is an Inuit tattoo artist and graphic designer from Kotzebue, and Charlene Apok, who is a mother and researcher for a tribal health organization. Holly was my first interview ever for Coffee and Quaq, and she's really great, and amazing. And so I was a little bit nervous, but as soon as I got there and we started the interview, we got so into it and we spoke for 3 hours. We spoke for 3 hours about cultural appropriation and decolonization and village drama and everything in between. We talked about a lot, and ironically, a lot of it wasn't on traditional Inuit tattoos. But a lot of what we were talking about can be attributed to future episodes, so I promise this isn't the last you'll hear of Holly Nordlum. Charlene was my second interview, and I seriously felt like I had gone through a therapy session after speaking with her. She speaks from the heart and from such a higher level of understanding, and both are super brilliant. And I'm so excited to share their stories with you all. Everyone has their own journey into how they got into any type of tattoos or tattooing. But both Holly and Charlene use Inuit tattooing as a focus on storytelling and cultural healing.
I did do it to bring something positive. And so when we took a training with Allison Kelleher from Nome, she's a tribal healer. Mm-hmm. And so we took training in tattooing, but then we took training with Allison to help people tell their stories. And I think that's the valuable part when we're tattooing, is that it's one-on-one, and you can talk to them, and they're feeling connected to culture. And we tell stories, and they tell us their story. And lots of these women, mostly, have never told their story or their connection to their own culture. So that's the valuable part, right. And that's what I was hoping it would bring, and it's been just freaking amazing, right? There's this little girl I did in Fairbanks when we were there for FNA, and she's 18, and I was like, that's real young.
I was who knew themselves at 18? You know what I mean? I did.
That's what I said. I was like, I don't know. Come over. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's really talk this out. Because I don't know. And she's going to UAF. And I was like, I don't know. So I agonized a bit. But then I was tattooing all day, and she came over. And I made her sit with them drawn on for a bit, and then look in the mirror regularly. And I just want to make sure. And then she had time to really tell me her story. And this poor little thing had been through so much. Abused by her father, was homeless for a bit, got knocked up, has a baby, trying to go to school. Her life was... And she's 30. She's not 18. She was getting it together, changing for her and her son and her grandma. So she's the one who takes care of all of them. And, it's a powerful story. So then after all that, I'm like, of course, now I see, but 18, yeah?
Yeah.
And I have an 18-year-old, and if he said, I want to tattoo my face, I'd be like, no. No.
For Holly and Charlene, Inuit tattooing provided a ceremonial space to listen and to share stories. While Holly was administering them, Charlene was researching about them.
As my undergraduate, I had tried to have my research always serve our community. How can research and academia serve our people? And so I had been working on a project called Storytelling is Healing. That was my undergraduate little project. But I know, I absolutely believe in the culture as the foundation of our wellness. I had been looking at gender relationships and what had kept us in harmony with one another, specifically through stories, the ones that kind of teach us lessons, and creation stories. And part of that was stories about men and women. And then I started thinking about the ceremonies that are associated with the ways that we practice that and apply our way of knowing. And so what were the ceremonies that were associated with that body of knowledge? And that's where tattooing came up. And then I started working up in Quaq. And multiple things are happening during this time of going to school. Again, like, I've been, in a weird way, Western academia has afforded me avenues to cultural connection that I wouldn't have otherwise had. It's a really strange dichotomy to have Western academia do that, but I've used it as a tool for that, very purposefully and deliberately. But one, I was working up in Quaq in research, and of course the beautiful women there and the leaders there of the generation before me had Taflgun. And I saw, maybe I worked with like 6 different women up there who had it, and I could slowly, they would tell me a little bit, and some of them told me about their trip to New Zealand and learning from our Indigenous brothers, Maori brothers and sisters down there, and having that be part of our revitalization story up here. And that was really important for me to see, because again, like living out of state and being raised in the city, I didn't see women around me having that connection to this practice. And that was really important, and that they shared their stories of their tattoo with me was also a huge privilege. I was really blessed. I love that community. They've been very good to me, and they've taught me a lot. Like, their willingness to teach, at least in my experience, has just been overwhelmingly wonderful.
For Holly and Charlene, their Inuit tattoos have become integral parts of their identities.
Well, now I look at pictures of me before, and I'm like, who the f*** is that?
Wow.
I know. I don't even know that person. Like, I'm just not that person anymore. I look so erased,
Wow.
Like, it's just so plain. I would never go back. I don't know how those girls feel, but I don't think they would either.
I asked Charlene if she had any fear or hesitation before getting her tavlirun or chin tattoos.
That's part of knowing yourself well enough, and part of that healing. Honestly, it's healing for us, and I think that's pretty safe to say for others. That you've come along in your healing journey with your self-identity, whatever complexities and nuances there are to that fear doesn't exist by the time you're ready. Because I'm unapologetically me every day. I'm a Nupaq woman first and foremost, all the time. And so to me it makes sense. And when after I got mine, I felt complete. Like, I felt more whole.
Wow.
I felt like a real person. Like, you come to understand those terms. Like, you always hear, like, we're the real people. But until like, you experience it, you're like, oh, this is really...
Yeah.
It was so fulfilling, and it just felt right.
Wow.
And so I think, it's part of healing, it's part of the ceremony. And then also, like, I won't apologize for who I am. I won't want to be someone different in any space I'm in, whether it's my job, whether it's my family, whether I'm here in the city or back home. I am me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we feel those pressures or those tensions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it also just reaffirms to just be true to yourself and who you are, no matter what space you're in. Whether you're speaking at a conference, whether you're, you shouldn't, I don't think, I want to be me in all space. I want to be the same Charlene, the same Apok everywhere I am.
Yeah.
And so to me that is one way those worries wash away,
While more and more natives are opening up the dialogue on traditional Inuit tattooing, Holly mentions it has not come without its challenges.
There's not a lot of talk about that. Even in Kotzebue, you have to almost pull teeth to get elders to talk to you about shit like that. But then once you start doing it, they just come to you then. Like my aunt, I had a cousin, my cousin's son died. They were having a big funeral up in Kotzebue. You know how a community comes together. Right. And then they were doing a fundraiser, and they're like, Holly, do you have art you can send? And so I sent an art piece, and my mom was here, and she made an atik look, so I brought it to my aunt's house, and then she's like, oh, sit down. And then she was telling me stories about tattooing and how my great Anna tattooed her, and she got one little dot from my great Anna. So it hurt too bad, but she got one little dot. But she told the story, and I'd never heard it, even though I'd asked.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like she was willing to share until I was already, 5 years into it.
Yeah.
It's almost like taboo.
Yeah. And what makes it taboo but religious ideas, right? The Western ideal of integration. And I do understand, like, my Anna, she was, her parents were alcoholics, so she was raised here in Eklutna. So born in Tikayok in Point Hope, but then raised it at an orphanage at Eklutna. Yeah, she was raised there, and then went back as an adult, and then ended up pregnant from a white guy, and then married my tata, right? A native guy. Because she was raised by a church there, and then went to Kotzebue, and then there was church there, she was really into just integrating. She spoke Inupiaq, but she never taught any of us. Like, even her kids, she never taught them. She would use it as a way to talk to her husband that we couldn't understand.
Yeah, tell my
That's
all the
it was always like this. Like trying to figure it out what she said.
Yeah.
What she said.
I heard you mention it. Yeah.
I understand where she was coming from. She didn't have any of that.
It's going to take
support. And it's going to take a lot to get someone like that to speak. Even her kids have feelings of shame still. Like my mom's generation.
Mm-hmm.
So they even have a hard time sharing. And then the blowback. We've had different issues with the state of Alaska and different entities and even elders. And
State of Alaska, what'd they say?
licensing. To tattoo in the state of Alaska, you have to have a tattoo license.
Oh.
And then, so then they don't really have anything set aside for traditional.
They don't have like a policy or something set
No,
up?
nothing like that. So, over the last 2 years, I've been putting pressure on them to pay attention and to change things. But somehow it's gotten through, and now they're inviting us to speak at their meetings and talk about this issue. And when I first got my tattoo, there were just a few women, just a few in the city. Now there's lots, and now I don't even know who has them. But back 3 years ago, it was just a few of us, and I was at the Native Hospital, and just incidences, some guy about my mom's generation followed behind me saying, "Who do you fucking think you are?" and blah 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 blah. He was just mumbling behind me, following me. Native, huh? I know. But at first I was broken. I was oh my god. My brother was having a baby, so I was so stressed about that. I mean, he wasn't. His wife was. He wasn't having nothing. So and it wasn't going well, so I was real stressed about that. So I was walking through the hospital, trying to get to them.
Right.
And he was following behind me, mumbling. And at first it was heartbreaking, after the baby was born and everything was fine. I had a moment and I was oh my god, and I was crying. And I was did I do the wrong thing? What am I doing? Blah, 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 blah. And then I had this realization that it wasn't about me at all. It was that guy and his issues and his own story, huh?
Right.
His own abuse, his own issues about all of it. So I didn't even take it personally, but I wish I had had the wherewithal to turn and say, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry what happened to you," or "Sorry you're even mad at me." Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to make your life any worse. I'm trying to make my life a little better. I just assumed that he felt like he had been through so much and given up so much, to what do you call that when you assimilate? That he felt like we were blatantly disrespecting him in some way. I mean, after I was able to come to terms with that, really it was his issue and not mine. This is trying to make life better for me, for us, our people, right? To bring some pride. So if he felt like I was disrespecting him, that was his own personal story that was talking to him, nothing to do with me.
Right.
Yeah. And now there's so many of us, whatever. What's he going to do now?
Yeah.
Go around talking to everybody behind them? You can't even say it in front of their face.
Yeah.
I was real worried about my own family because I know you guys are from Barrow. You know how they can be. And your own community can be so hard. And